Welcome to the podcast, Beyond Expectations, Parenting Autism. Follow Michelle Chabola's journey of raising a child with autism, the challenges, victories, and rewards. If you're a parent, caregiver, or simply someone seeking to understand autism on a personal level, you're in the right place.
This is Michelle with Beyond Expectations. We are back for an amazing informational episode with a guest, and we have Rondalyn Whitney here, and of course, Sean Dobson.
Hi, Rondalyn. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Do you want
So shall I introduce myself for a minute?
Take a minute. Thank
you. Sure. So I'm an occupational therapist. My area of specialty is working with children with neurobehavioral disorders, autism, nonverbal learning disability, bipolar, ADHD, just a whole cluster. You know, it all falls kind of in a soup anyway. So it all's in that bucket.
Talk about that. These labels are frustrating because
they can be frustrating. And we can talk about that today if you'd like, because I think that's an interesting idea of why it's like that. Anyhow, those are the kids I worked with. And of course, when I'm working with children, that means I'm working with families and I'm working with the systems, the schools, and the community. So that was my work. I have advanced practice specialties in sensory integration, which be really great to talk about. I did a rotation at AIR's clinic out in California. So I got to learn right there with her stuff, which was nice. And then I had the great privilege of working alongside of some of the people that actually worked with, and they were trained by Jean Ayers, who is the founder of sensory integration as a theoretical intervention. And so they really understood the sensory system in ways that a lot of other people downstream over the years either don't understand or have deviated from. So working with them allowed me to understand the evidence behind sensory integration as an intervention. So that I know that's something that Michelle, you and I talked about, and that I'd like to talk a little bit more about it today.
That's great. I already have like 19 questions. So
Excellent.
My job is a village idiot here. I don't know anything about this whole topic.
Excellent.
I try to imagine the questions that people might ask. So
I think there's nothing better than to have an open mind and know very little, because then you get to ask the questions that other people don't think to ask because they think they already know. So
I'm playing the idiot very well.
Excellent.
So I'm not familiar with the Ayers work or the Ayers clinic. So maybe start there.
Okay. So Jean Ayers, back in the 50s, was a neurologist, and she worked primarily with individuals with ADHD. And she started noticing that there were, I'm going to hijack her story a little bit, but she started noticing that there seemed to be something else going on neurophysiologically that was in the way of them being able to regulate. So a lot of people talk about sensory integration and regulation, but she really thought that there was something going on that was inhibiting the child's ability to integrate information through the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, etc., all of those systems. And just a sidebar to kind of put it in context, if we were to look at the nervous system, all nerves to the brain are sensory nerves. And all nerves from the brain are motor nerves. It's just the way everything's wired. Now, once it gets in the brain, they mess around a little bit, but all nerves to the brain. So the way we understand our world.
Information in, action out, basically.
Exactly. So the way we understand our world is through the senses. And, when we're in kindergarten, we teach the 5 senses, but there's actually more like 8 senses. Neurologists think there's probably more like 200 senses, but we're going to talk about 8 because that just helps us understand it. So Jean Ayers was really the first person to sort of think about this and put it together and say, if a child can't organize and integrate information coming into their body, it's going to be really hard for them to use it in behalf of the things they want to do. So her theory specifically says sensory integration for use. So oftentimes I see people that provide sensory input and call it sensory integration, but it's not, because you have to do sensory integration for use. So you use the principles of the intervention, and then you give the child something to do that they really couldn't do before, so that you put that pathway together. So sensory integration for use is AIR's sensory integration approach.
Wow, that sounds incredible. So,
Yeah,
so tell us about going in your practice. I guess what is that to put more context on it? So
sure,
when you're sort of using these
sure.
interventions, how do you break it down to like the most simple
Yeah.
maybe what?
So let me tell you a little bit about. Let me define the senses that we pay the most attention to, and then talk about how to sort of do an intervention during a treatment. I think we put it in context for you. So the senses that we talk about, the ones we all know, are eyes, ears, nose, mouth, right? Sense of touch, that's a big one. But the sense of touch has two different pathways. There's one that brings information like tickly touch, itch, temperature, fast. And then we have the deep pressure system, which is um, a bigger nerve, and it's organizing. So that's why, it's sort of silly if you ever hit your thumb with a hammer. It doesn't make sense, but the first thing you do is grab it and squeeze it. That doesn't make sense. It seems like you'd want to like not touch it, but you grab it and squeeze it because you're taking pain, which is the tickly touch and pain and itch system, and you're putting in deep pressure, which regulates, calms, and organizes that input. So the touch system has two. We also talk about the vestibular system. That's that system in your inner ear that tells you where your head is in space when you're going round and round or you're going forward. And you've probably had that experience sitting in your car where you're minding your own business, you're sitting at the red light and the car beside you goes backwards and you freak out and you push the brake. That's because your vestibular system got information through the eyes and said, hey, I'm moving. And then you push out to the brake, and then the rest of you says, no, I'm not, silly, right? But that's that the visual and vestibular system works together. And then the proprioceptive system is that system in the joints and muscles. So it tells us where our arms are and where our body is in space and time, tells us how heavy something is. You can play a lot of fun tricks on people with the proprioceptive system. There's this great trick where like a comedian walks in with a box and they act like it's super, super, super heavy and they struggle and they hand it to a person and that person is watching this and calibrating how heavy the load is without really thinking about it, but they do that. And then you put the empty box in their hands and their arms will go up, right? So that's the proprioceptive system. When the proprioceptive system is not working in a typical fashion, those are kids that break their pencil lead, or they push too hard, or they push too softly, or they can't figure out how to make their fingers work together to make buttons or zippers go together because that system in the joints and muscles is just not quite working. So let's see, did I get each of the systems?
Is that the reason I can't handwrite very well?
The reason you can't handwrite very well is a little more complicated, but if you want, I can help you handwrite in a pretty good way.
Yeah, because you can't read it.
What's interesting, Rondalyn, as we go through all the symptoms that Gregory has, we realize that we all have some version of
We
it.
all have some version of it. Yes, yes. The final system, sensory system that I think is really important to talk about, and we really just started talking about it about 10 years ago, is called the interoceptive system. And the interoceptive system, each of these systems only works because it has a receptor. And some kind of input makes that receptor fire. So if I get visual input in my eyes, my receptors fire. If I get auditory input through my eyes, nothing happens. That makes sense, right?
Right.
So in the interoceptors are in the organs in your body, inside, and they really only pay attention to distension and pressure. And that's really pretty important. So your stomach says, I'm empty, I'm full. Your heart says, I'm empty, I'm full. Your colon says, I'm empty, I'm full. This gets back to what we're going to talk about with the brushing in a minute. I'm empty, I'm full.
Mhm.
And the way I like to explain it is it kind of makes a lot of sense. Like you don't want your colon to say anything other than I'm empty or full. You don't want it talking to you about anything else. Like TMI, right? It's like, okay, you're full. That's your interoceptive system, and we're learning a lot more about that system over the most recent years.
Wow.
And it comes into play a lot with people who have anxiety. Like, I don't know why I feel this way. I can't locate why I feel this way. It is prone to trauma. It gets faulty messaging during trauma, so for children. So anyway, so those are the systems that we'll talk about today. So at the end of the whole story about the sensory system, sensory integration for use, we want the system to be in balance. We want it to be regulated. And we know that we can put information into the nervous system that alerts you or calms you down, right? That makes sense. So I could scream really loud. I'm an alto, so it's hard for me to scream loud enough that would really annoy you. But there are things that we can do that really activate somebody's,
Yes.
fight or fright, and things that we can do to calm it down.
A baby crying.
Right, a baby crying.
Baby crying.
So an alto singing, right, is really calming, that kind of thing. So what Jean Ayres helped us understand is when the sensory system is not regulated, it's either too high or too low, we can put information into the proprioceptive system or the deep pressure touch system, and that helps regulate it. And it has to do with the way the nerves are, like a freeway. And that takes us back to brushing.
Interesting.
Now we can talk about brushing. So brushing, bear with me for the whole story. Brushing does not work.
I live this. I'm all about it. Go
Stay
ahead.
with me. Stay with me for just a second.
Now, for
Brushing.
those that don't know what we're talking about, this is my only job here on
The Will Barger brushing protocol.
Will Barger brushing method, and we did talk about it, Sean.
We talked about this, but it is literally brushing.
It's
using a surgical scrub brush, and you brush the skin of a child.
One direction, like you're not scrubbing, you're doing
correct.
Okay.
One direction. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Gregory, is this something that you used to try with Gregory?
I did with Gregory. This is what changed my life with Gregory, big time.
Wow. Okay. Now Rondalyn says it's.
So go ahead, Rondalyn. We interrupted you. You said stay with you. We interrupted.
Stay with me on this. All right. Patty Will Barger created the brushing protocol. And the brushing protocol does not work. But don't quote me there. You have to let me finish the whole sentence. The brushing protocol is a systematic way to deliver deep pressure and proprioception in a very systematic way so that it goes on all the skin, the deep pressure on all the skin. So when you use the brush to deliver the deep pressure input, you're pushing down on the breast so the bristles are bent, right? You don't do light tickly touch. You push down really hard. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, if you do it correctly, you're sweaty at the end of delivering the input. So it's got. And then the second part of the quote brushing is you do joint compressions, right? You push and pull on the joints and muscles. That's proprioception. So deep pressure and proprioception. And the brushing protocol was designed to help parents and other people deliver deep pressure and proprioception in a systematic, regulated way.
Interesting. So I'm catching up here. The deep pressure, I understand. What is the proprioception?
Proprioception. So I'm gonna have you do some proprioception to yourself.
All right.
Okay. So if you take your fingers and you push really hard on your fingers.
All right.
And then you pull on all your fingers.
Yep.
If you were 9 years old and in my clinic and we were going to work on handwriting, we would get your hands ready for good work by pushing and pulling on your joints and muscles that use a pencil.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept there is that it does what to the joints? Just by opening them up, you increase the neural pathways, or you?
We're actually not working on the joints so much as we're giving input into the brain carried through the joints and muscles of your hands that wakes up your brain, has it be regulated, so that when we put a pencil in it, it says, okay, I can be calm now. I can be organized now. I have more input through the touch system. A lot of children have difficulty with writing because they hate the way it sounds on the paper, the pencil. They hate the way it feels where it's been, the wood. They hate the way it smells. They got all kinds of reasons for hating it.
Right.
So if we put deep pressure and proprioception into the system, that gives us a little bit of a regulation for the child so that we can then give them some work to do. And in your case, if you were 9 years old, that might be working with your pencil for handwriting.
Interesting. So really it's I'm catching up now. So it's basically priming your nervous system by very intentionally producing those signals that go into your brain that regulate your system. Those things they're effectively is this your subconscious, or we call this your autonomic system? What do we call this?
This is your this is your nervous system, your sensory nervous system.
Your sensory nervous system that's processing information that you're really not aware it's processing. In essence.
You may or may not be aware, but you are always aware of your sensory processing, one way or another. Some people are over-registering information, like the slightest breeze, and they're like, "Wah!" right? That's over-registering, and some are under-registering. They're like, what? Yeah. You're like, you got food all over your face. Like, what? Like under-registering, right? So over-registering or under-registering. And you can over and under-register in any of the sensory systems.
Interesting. And so your therapy, and the therapy you're talking about is this therapy that with very intentional inputs basically allows you to, I don't want to say reset, but you were saying regulate.
Regulate.
Regulate your nervous system. Mm-hmm. I've heard these terms before. I didn't really know.
Integrate. Yeah, we want to integrate those systems. And in a typically developing nervous system with babies, those systems are getting integrated when they crawl, when they walk, when they play, when they rock, and so on. But for some nervous systems, I like to talk about nervous systems and not people, but for some nervous systems, they need more input in order to integrate. Mm-hmm. Some need less in order to integrate, and so they avoid it, right? And so because of those two things, they're not getting the kind of input that a typical developing nervous system would be getting. And so then when we give them work to do, holding a pencil, being a good friend, whatever it is, they're not ready to do it. Developmentally, they're not ready to do it. So AIRS sensory integration as an approach, as a science, systematically provides that input. It's a developmental theory. So it systematically provides that information into the nervous system to help it develop in a more typical fashion, to catch up, so to speak.
You explained that so well. It makes sense. So what are other kinds of sort of inputs that you can intentionally provide? Is there a whole range of them?
Yeah. So if you've ever seen a sensory integration clinic, it's like a playroom, right? It's got all kinds of stuff going on. So there's suspended equipment, and maybe with what do they call that? Like a board,
right.
Swing, and it's suspended, right? And so the child might sit on that, and we twirl them or we rock them back and forth. And while they're doing that, that's the vestibular system. They're getting input into the vestibular system. When you get input into the vestibular system, I can't talk about it without moving. You get input into the vestibular system, your proprioceptive system, your muscle system wants to correct.
So, Sean, you don't remember me having one in my basement in Colorado?
Yeah, I remember, but so many people have.
So Gregory would not get dizzy, Rondalyn. He could not.
So he had. I'm gonna name that for you. He was under registering. So Gregory was under registering vestibular input into his system.
Spun him, and he would get off and walk a straight line. And I will never forget the day that he fell down when he got off, because that's what we did every day. We just, Sean, just in a circle as fast as you could spin him. And he would just laugh and get off and walk right off. And you put Michael on it, and hit the
Never get
wall.
dizzy.
Never
Yeah,
got dizzy. You'd have to see
So
it
the
to believe it.
yeah, and so we say of children they never get dizzy, and then if we were to say that in scientific neurological terms, or if we were to write that in the chart, under registering of vestibular input.
Wow.
Interesting.
And then now I have a question for you. So if a
Mhm.
person is under registering or over registering for sensory input, I have two tools in my toolkit to help them become more integrated and regulate. Do you remember what they are?
No, I don't.
I don't.
I brushed Gregory. I did the swing.
Okay, so well, let's again, one of the things that I thought was really fascinating, Michelle, when you and I talked before the podcast, that I'm really committed to. I'm really committed to helping parents and families understand what is going on so that they are able to choose 10 more things without me being there to help them.
Right.
That they can say, okay, it's kind of like, you know, I grew up in the South, I'm a scratch cook. So I can open an empty refrigerator and make a meal for 20 people. Like that's how I was taught, right? And it's because I know what things go well together and I know what to choose and what not to choose, right?
Mhm.
So sensory integration as a air sensory integration approach is like that. We need to help people understand, why did this work? Okay, good. Now that I understand that, what's 10 more things like that I can do?
Mhm.
Because then the child gets enough doses throughout their day. They're
Yeah.
going to get better faster because they're getting it 20 times a week instead of once a week. So I'm really passionate about this. So go back to your story. I know, without having been there, when Gregory was on the swing, I know that after you did the swinging,
Mhm.
you had to do some kind of deep pressure and proprioception after. Maybe while he was on the swing, he was pulling on a rope, which would be proprioception.
Mhm.
Maybe he was catching a heavy ball, which would be proprioception.
Mhm.
Maybe he was listening to music with deep tones, which would be proprioception into the eardrums.
Mhm.
Maybe he was squeezing putty, which would be proprioception. Or maybe you did the brushing either before or after, which would be deep pressure and proprioception. And I know that because you said after a while he was able to walk a straight line.
Yeah. Well, he walked a straight line, and then finally he got dizzy, and he couldn't even get off of it. It was amazing. It was just like in one day. We did a
Yes.
lot of brushing, lot of deep pressure, and he loved all of it. He was very receptive to all of it,
Right.
which
Yeah,
was really
I often think about, if children could talk, if their brains could talk, they would say, I don't mean verbally, but if their brains could talk, they would say, oh, thank God, that deep pressure and proprioception is really helping me out. I did not know how to organize this stuff. I got papers everywhere in this brain of mine. And you
right.
gave me this deep pressure and proprioception, and now I can put it into categories. And now it's like anything. If I have a organized desk, I can reach in and get what I need and put it to use.
Mhm.
That's a great way. That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah. And there's just so many little tools. Like I told you, we found the mini backpack and put books in it when we'd go to the mall,
All
and
right,
that
so let's do a
it
quiz again.
seemed to center
Let's
him. He
let's do
wasn't
a quiz
jumping
again.
like
All
crazy.
right,
Yeah.
you ready for your quiz? Ready
I
for your
don't
quiz?
know. It's been a while. Sure.
Well, I have a question. Was the book
Wait,
thing not something to mess with the books? You're saying the weight and the pressure on them,
Wait. Mhm. The
and
weight
that
and
was
the
feeding information to his nervous system that was allowing him to organize all of the inputs in a way that
that was
allowed
that was
him.
that was if you think about a backpack that's heavy, a weighted backpack. You could have a weighted belt, a weighted backpack, a weighted vest, a weighted hat. We've
the hat.
sewn fish weights into people's pockets,
Yeah.
weighted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Just
So
wait.
if you have something weighted that is putting extra gravity on your joints and muscles, that's proprioception. And if the backpack is nice and tied up against you, that can be deep pressure. So deep pressure and proprioception. So you figure that out on your own.
Mhm.
Had you known, oh my God, I need 20 more deep pressure and proprioceptive ideas here, what else have I got around the house? You would have come up with a lot of other things around your house.
Yeah. He liked the weighted blanket, but he did not like the weighted hat at all. It was
Yeah.
awful though. It was pretty awful though. If you put it on
Yeah.
yourself, you're just like,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
weighted
Some people
blanket.
love it.
And now they make weighted blankets for you and I. Sean just gave me
Yeah.
one for my birthday. That's a weighted blanket.
Right.
And
And that's the
Gregory's was
same
awful.
idea, is it's the pressure on your muscles is helping you organize all of the inputs going through your brain.
Almost. So a weighted blanket is deep pressure into the tactile system, right? So that's deep pressure into the tactile system. If you push on the weighted blanket and lift it, that's information into your joints and muscles, the proprioceptive system.
That's fascinating.
Isn't
And
it
remember,
fascinating?
It's fascinating, but it's kind of given me a whole series of questions that maybe you guys don't want to spend time on. But when we talk about someone that's diagnosed with autism, right? I've never really understood. Are we talking about a brain issue? Are we talking about an intelligence issue? Or are we really just saying that it's that not just saying, but are we saying that it's really this it's it's the fact that you're receiving all these inputs. They're very difficult to organize. I think, Michelle, at some point someone told us that Gregory has a hard time prioritizing inputs. He sees it all, hears it all, and that becomes overwhelming. But with autism, is that really what we're talking about? Is it this nervous system that is becoming overwhelmed because the information streams are not integrated? Or is that one factor of someone that has autism?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So there's a book called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the DSM. We have written it multiple times, not me, but the profession, psychology, and we're on version 5. So version 5. So over time, the writers of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual have tried to identify and specifically describe what is and what is not autism, what is and what is not bipolar, what is and what is not any of the mental health clusters, ADHD, et cetera. They're all in there. So it's like the Bible of diagnoses for mental health, and each one has a code, and you need that code in order to get reimbursed. Like that's the Bible. Okay, so
I'm going to ask a clarifying question. Once this, I guess someone does, I guess it's almost, I guess, a questionnaire, right? Of like trying to fit into one of these designations of ADHD or autism things. Does that also prescribe their treatment, or does in your role have the ability to kind of drift across?
Yeah, well, many of the treatments are the same for all of the diagnoses,
Okay.
but some interventions might be more appropriate for one versus the other.
I see.
So in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5, that was written by a group of people from Kennedy Krieger Institute, Center for Autism and Related Disorders in Baltimore. And I know that because I worked there when they happened. I wasn't part of the people writing it, but I got to be in the room and talk to them and give information and answer questions and basically enjoy being there, right? And listening to them talk. So what they did in the DSM-5 that was really helpful is they said, okay, autism has 3 things that happens. And one of those things is that they have differences with the sensory system. So that became part of the diagnosis. All right. So they had difficulty with social, they had difficulty with sensory. All right. Those are the 2 biggies. And then they also in the DSM-5 did something super helpful. And they said, and one can have autism with or without an intellectual disability. We have another category called intellectual disability. Autism can either have or not have.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always associate it with some sort of intellectual disability.
Correct.
When someone has Asperger's versus autism, the layman's perspective, I think, is Asperger's is someone that's extraordinarily high functioning intellectually, but then has sort of a different, a difficulty or a different approach to social interaction. Is that?
Sort of. So I think that's a layperson's understanding. Fun fact, the DSM-5 chose to not include Asperger's or nonverbal learning disorder. It's not in there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're like, oh, somebody made this up a long time ago, Dr. Asperger's, and we really don't know what it is. We can't distinguish it from anything else. It's not
Which,
distinctive. So we're going to just leave it out. And so now we have autism with or without intellectual disability. Anyone with autism has some unusual, atypical ways of processing sensation by definition in the DSM. Okay, so that's really helpful. And so now we have these people who have some type of autistic tendencies, like maybe just the social or so on. So they have the categories, and they have autism level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those levels are related to how much assistance the individual needs in order to live their life. So autism, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with or without intellectual disability. And that became specifically important for the research, because before that, it was very difficult to say, we have a group of individuals, we're doing some research, they have autism, we think, we're not sure. We've excluded anyone with an intellectual disability because that's hard to include in our intervention. So every time we would read about interventions for people with autism, it had excluded anyone with an intellectual disability. So then you read, okay, here's the best practice for people with autism. It's like, but it doesn't work for my kid. It's like, well, okay, now we can understand that. So they did us, I think, a great service of teasing that out. It was hard work. Had some political conversations around that because some people, had ideas about it. But that's what we have to date for the DSM. And I think that's been very helpful for parents. We have a lot of young adults who now understand that they have autism and had autism, that either went undiagnosed or they were given the wrong information about the way they process the world. And they're really helping us understand, like feeding back and feeding forward even more data now that we have this better system of understanding what autism is and isn't.
and how old is that? How long has that system been in place?
So the DSM-5, again, it's a diagnostics, right? It's the category of diagnosing. That came out, it must have been around, I'm going to say 2015-ish. I can find that out exactly.
But we're 10+ years into having essentially 10 categories, right? So it's five levels with or without a mental disability or an intellectual disability.
Yes,
right?
Intellectual disability. Yeah, and they tweak it. They have DSM-5R, and they're like always looking at it and updating it. And at some point, we're going to have the DSM-6. I don't know when that's coming, but we will have it, because as we learn more, we can do better. And so I think that's a good thing.
That's
people
amazing.
are using the levels now. I've noticed level 1. There's what level? I couldn't even answer that question. I don't know how they. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 must be very high. Is level 1 is very low functioning, right? And level 5 is higher.
Yeah, we try hard to not say high and low functioning, because that indicates some things that we don't mean. So really, the levels are about how much assistance does the individual need, and that's important in schools. So if you have you have children in a classroom who are, say, level 2, they're going to need different levels of assistance in that classroom in a different classroom setting than a child with a level 5.
I see.
So
that's super helpful.
Are we getting politically correct though? In a way, to me, it seems.
Well, I think what I would say is, from the feedback that we've gotten from adults with autism, they have asked us to be more inclusive and to talk about them in a way that they feel like they're not broken, but that they're who they are. And I am super grateful for all that the children I've worked with have taught me. I am such a better person.
We talk about this a lot. That
We do.
Gregory is a pleasure to be around, and
Yes, they're lovely.
And he seems to not seems to have. He has an incredible level of empathy, almost to a point that it hurts him because he
That's right.
absorbs.
That's
So
right.
how is that connected to this nervous system that's has this structure that's confusing and not segregated? How is that empathy that we see that's so common? How is that connected to this?
Well, I haven't seen a lot written about this or researched about it, but I can speak to it from my personal experience.
Yeah.
It seems to me that these children, and I know we're talking about all ages, but I'm going to use children because they're innocent and you can see them better, right? We haven't like put all of our blankets on them, like and then they, whatever. But the way back in time, the way that autism was distinguished is the diagnostician said they look angelic. They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They're beautiful. Mm-hmm. And if they aren't beautiful, it's probably not autism.
And that's the peace they have in their face. That's it, those innocent eyes, those big puppy dog eyes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. And they have a little bit more fat in their tissue because they have lower proprioceptive system, so their muscles aren't taut, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they used to say angelic. Wow. And I'm on for that. Like
I've heard that. That sounds way better.
So
it's like level 1 through 5.
And they are, I think, in my experience, they have good radars, but they don't necessarily know what's going on. So they don't necessarily take their understanding of social information and put it into what to do with it. Mm-hmm. So like they may understand that you're sad, but they may not understand what to do about that. Or they, and then their filters, they don't have the social language, so their filters are off. And again, I love these kids because they say things like, one of my favorite kids, I got called in to work with a kid one time and they were going to kick him out of the school. Like the teacher had it. She was like, lobbying to get this kid kicked out and sent to another school. And she was all about it, man. And everybody's all head up. So I go in, I'm like, okay, well, I'll do a classroom observation. I go in. And the problem was this boy, 4th grader, kept saying the teacher is ugly and she stinks. She's ugly and she stinks. I hate her. She's ugly and she stinks. I'm like, So I go in, I'm sitting in the back of the classroom. Mary Kay, the makeup. Okay. So this teacher looked like she had put the entire Mary Kay kit on every day. You know what I'm saying? Like she was ugly in the sense that she was way too loud. Yeah. Right? Now this boy didn't know how to say she's wearing too much makeup. She's too loud. Yeah. And I'm sitting in the back of the room. I'm a redhead. I'm sensory sensitive. I'm sitting in the back of the room and the woman has perfume on. There's like 40-foot perfume. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. So that's what it was.
She was stinky and she was ugly. Like I think if you washed her up a little bit, maybe, but the kid was dying. He was dying. His sensory system was completely freaking out. And he was using the only words he knew. So I went to the principal and I said, because my job was to report back on what to do with this problem child. I went to the principal and I said, okay, I'd like to meet with you privately. I think I have some information to provide to the team. So I met with the principal and I said, I don't want to go to the team and say, he's right, she's ugly and stinks. I don't want to say that. But here's what's happening. And I explained what was happening to the principal. And I said, I think it would just be better for everyone if we moved him to another room. And the other 4th grade teacher is a guy.
There you go.
Who wears nothing. Like he's got flannel on every day. He got boots on. Like if we just move him, I think it'll all be over.
Yeah,
that's what they did. It's all over.
I
That's
love
my
it.
story with Gregory. Remember, Sean, with the psychologist or psychiatrist that wanted to give him every med known to mankind because he got the giggles, Rondalyn. He got the giggles really bad. And I walked out with all these prescriptions, and I'm like, Gregory, what happened? This guy thinks you're losing it. He goes, he's so funny looking. He
He's
just
so
laughed,
funny looking.
and the
Right,
guy
right,
was funny looking. He had big suspenders, big striped shirt.
right.
He had a lot going on, and Gregory just couldn't process it.
So I think that gets back to
Right,
Sean's
right. He
question.
needs
It's a
anti-anxiety. He needs
perfect example because Gregory was picking up his radar was working.
yeah.
He was taking in information from a social situation,
Mhm.
but he couldn't really organize and articulate it
No,
in the way that we could understand. And then, unfortunately, people jump to conclusions from their own
that there's
way
something
of
wrong with
thinking.
Yeah.
yeah.
What they think that means.
It's crazy.
Wow. So
It's very
we can
interesting.
talk to you for hours. How does a find Rondalyn? Well, first of all, are you publishing somewhere that people can follow you?
Yeah, so I was telling Michelle that years ago, I really wanted to figure out how to put OT in a box, right? Like, okay, here's a box. Because I had people at the time, I had a clinic in California, I had people come from Canada and all over the country. And that really broke my heart. I didn't feel my ego was not impressed by that. My motherhood was sad about that. People should be able to find what they need in their local community. So
Mhm.
I have written several books on this that are very family friendly, and they're available on Amazon. And I recommend them. I mean, I can give them away free sometimes. I've got a big stack of them. I do talks at libraries all the time, and I'm like, here, take them, take them, take them. Because I just want people to have the information. I'm getting ready to do an updated, revised version of one of the books, but the books on Amazon about sensory are meant to be OT in a box. One of them talks about just what we've just talked about, goes
Mhm.
through it all. I co-wrote it with Wendy Pickering, who's a genius out in California, genius. And we break it down very simply so parents can
Right.
understand it. And then the other book is definitely OT in a box. It has 52 activities, so an activity for one a week. Every activity has what I call a power up. Here's how to make it harder, right? And they're meant to be integrated into your day to day life. So here's some activities for mealtime. Here's activities for evening routines. Here's activities for morning routines, etc. And they're organized like that. So parents open it up, they do one, send the kids to school. Open it
Nice.
up, do one, send. So, like for example, time for bed, often a problem for children. So instead of saying go brush your teeth, then the child might do bear walks into the bathroom because they're getting that deep pressure and proprioception into the joints and muscles, which will help them feel more regulated and organized. They can brush their teeth and go to bed.
Nice.
That
And so,
is
what are the name of both books, real quick, before we have to
Yeah,
go?
that's a really good. Let me grab them off my shelf here because I never remember. One of them is raising kids with sensory processing disorders, and the other
Very
one
nice.
is
Which I did
hang on.
on wheels.
how do you find an OT? Is everyone qualified for an OT?
This is such great information, and what I really want to tell. None of this is going to hurt your child. It's only going to make it better,
I've learned
and
over.
it's very inexpensive. Right here, it's in a book. I went to clinics and learned it different ways. Cost me a lot of
Well,
money.
does insurance cover if my child would benefit from this? Can I get a prescription for an occupational? Like, how does this work? How do I
Yeah. So
get the service?
here's the other one. Self-regulation, a family system approach is the other book.
I probably need to
Okay.
read that myself. I
And then
regulate.
So yes, they
first-
get a diagnosis and they need OT. They get OT. Yeah,
well,
definitely.
and importantly, because in the DSM they added sensory, it's now covered.
It's got a code.
And because sensory processing disorder is not a diagnosis in and of itself, it's not been put into the DSM, right?
Mhm.
When we're talking about third-party reimbursement, your insurance,
Mm.
When you work with an occupational therapist, they can often help you work with your doctor to identify a diagnosis that does qualify for the intervention.
Yes.
Excellent.
It's an elaborate shell game, but we're happy to help you play it.
It is.
Wow. That's so
That's
complex.
awesome.
The whole process is so complex.
So glad you found us. This was really, really nice. This was
This was so fun. Thank you for letting me talk about this. Obviously I can go on and on and on because I just think
Oh,
it's
well,
so
we want to have
important.
you back. There was no way we could. There's so much value here, so we definitely want to have you back. Thank you so much.
Great. You're welcome.
okay.
Thank you for the
This was
opportunity, and
amazing.
I'm sure it's going to help more kids, and that's the point of
That's it.
life, right? Is to help
That's right.
families and children.
That's right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank
Well
you.
All
done.
right.
All right.
And
Thanks a
Sean,
lot.
you can take me up on helping you with your handwriting. Really,
I
I can help
know.
you
I'm
with that.
57 years into not knowing how to write, so.
There you go.
Well, it's really okay unless it's in your way of doing the things you need to
Yeah.
do. If it is
Well,
in the
now I've
way,
moved to not knowing how to type, so I'm progressing.
you're all set
There,
then.
there
Okay.
you go.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you so
We've done
much.
lots
You.
of therapists
Can't
for
wait to have you
Sean
back.
podcast. Lots of therapy for Sean. All right. Have a good one. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.